who achieve great things, amazing things, right? Sorry, just a small light adjustment there. There we go. So I speak to people all the time who are really confident, very capable people who, when it comes to having to stand up and say a few words, struggle. Suddenly it feels very, very challenging. It feels very, very difficult. And when I talk to people about what's going on and why that is, there's always a fair similarity of responses. So people often talk about feeling judged. So people will, so I'll be moving some tech around here. So you're getting a small glimpse behind the scenes. There we go. Hopefully that's a little bit, it's not a lot of difference, is it? There we go. I think so. So, when I talk to people who are super confident, when I talk to people who are very accomplished in their own businesses, when I talk to people who run big teams, big departments, people who have real responsibilities, one of the interesting common conversations that we have is how judged people feel when they stand up to speak. And this is a really key one. So if you're somebody who wants to be more confident when you speak at work, for conferences, for meetings, for briefings, I'm always, no matter what time of the year, I'm always working with one or two people on a one-to-one basis to try and help them build that confidence when it comes to speaking publicly. And it's such a recurring difficulty and issue. I thought it might be quite an interesting little idea just to chat about. So let's get into this. Now, one of the big problems is that if it comes to pretty much any other skill you have at work, selling stuff, laying out your content on a spreadsheet, putting a strategy together, articulating that, many of us feel that those are work-based things, and therefore we're able to separate ourselves from the work, from the skill, right? And so what happens is people will very confidently and comfortably say things like, I'm great at getting the team together, or I've got a great eye for detail, or actually detail's not my thing, but I'm very good at the big picture. I can really strategize, one of those lovely corporate words that we hear from time to time. But one of the things you'll almost never hear from people is saying, actually, I'm very good at standing up and saying a few words, which when you think about it is quite an unusual thing for us to feel uncomfortable saying, because most of us have got this far in life with the ability to communicate with other people, right? No one, as far as I am aware, has ever come back of a fantastic holiday with their partner, met their close friends in a pub or for a meal, and then said, oh, what a break. Let me put the spreadsheet up. Let me get the PowerPoint set up and I'll show you how it went. People don't do it. You know why? Because you don't need to, because you are perfectly able to share some funny stories. You're able to say, well, this happened and then that happened, and oh, he was fuming, wasn't he? Oh, and she went up to do. We're all very comfortable doing that. But when it comes to standing up and saying a few words, people tend to get a little bit weird, a little bit uncomfortable. And part of the reason you have to understand, if you want to improve at this, there's no nice way through this, you're going to have to add and cope with and cater for a little bit of pain and discomfort. Now, I know that when the whole COVID thing happened and everybody switched to online, a number of people did then, and still do now, talk about how uncomfortable they are talking on this camera, right? They don't like it. They don't like seeing themselves. And I get that. But what I'm trying to share with people as leaders, if we want to be able to do the thing we are supposed to do, this is just one of those many skills we're going to have to get used to. And this is the very first thing that I want us to understand. If you want to be a stronger presenter, whether this is for a big conference, I've got a client who's got a big conference coming up in a couple of months, and this individual hasn't really done anything like this before. They've done it with colleagues, but they've got to do this themselves. They've got to be on stage by themselves for probably 20 minutes. They've got to be talking in front of, I think it's about 300-400 people. And you might imagine they are very, very nervous. And what's interesting, whenever I talk to people about what they get nervous about, it's always the same few things. It's this idea of being judged by your colleagues. It's this idea of saying the wrong thing. It's about your idea of your mind going blank. We all have this perpetual fear of, what if we're boring? What if we say a joke and nobody laughs? What if we trip over our own feet? What if our minds go blank? What if, and this is a very common one, what if there's somebody sat on the front row judging us? And in order to cope with all of these things that I'm sharing with you, I'm going to give you the real answers. I've been standing up in front of large numbers of people for my entire working career so far, and in fact, prior to that. So let's get away with a couple of things. First of all, I'm not naturally confident. There is nothing natural about standing up and saying a few words. It's an entirely weird thing to do. It's not a normal, natural experience. People don't naturally stand up and say a few words. It doesn't happen, right? People stand up and say a few words because they have to, because they're told to, because somebody thinks it'd be good for their development. So let's get away from this idea of it's a natural thing. There's nothing natural about it at all. If you're going to do it, you have to embrace the idea that you're going to do it. So small lesson for everybody who is speaking publicly, try and understand this. If you stand up and speak, we can all see you. We can all hear you. We are all aware that you are doing talking, right? We're all able to see that. This idea that you can somehow stand up but not get too well noticed doesn't really work. Remember, you're the one person in the room facing the wrong way. You may be lit up. There might be microphones involved. Could be cameras involved if it's an online thing or it's a really big event. So you're always going to be seen. It happens. We can see you. We can hear you. So to a degree, you have to sort of find a way to be comfortable with this. It's not always comfortable, but you do have to find a way to be comfortable with this. Now, that said, how do you find a way to be comfortable to it? Because it still doesn't feel very comfortable, right? Despite me saying all of this. Well, it doesn't feel comfortable because it's unusual. And because what you have to understand is that the more of it you do, the easier it gets. Again, that doesn't sound very helpful, but there's a few little mental tips, all sorts of things that you need to try and drop in here. And these include things like when you stand up to speak, if it's a very hostile audience, and I have to say, most audiences aren't that hostile. All right. Most audiences are absolutely fine. I can't speak on behalf of yours, of course. You might have some awful audiences you have to speak to. But in most cases, most audiences are absolutely fine. In fact, most audiences have a very midway experience of what to expect from a presenter. So I speak a lot publicly, and I really do. I'll fess up now. I beat myself up if I don't get a really good response. But that's because I've been doing it for a long time. But I know people who stand up and give perfectly competent, decent, reasonable presentations and are absolutely overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, that was awful, that was boring, this didn't work, that didn't work. So we've got to fundamentally rework this in our brains. When you stand up to communicate, when you share something, there's a few things. First of all, you have to do it because it's your job. So let's get past the idea of, well, some people can do it, some people can't. No. If you want to be better at presenting, it is simply a matter of deciding that's what you're going to do and then learning a few skills. A bit of practice will help. Once you have decided that, then there are some mind gymnastics you need to consider. So when I'm stood up speaking to some people, simultaneously, all at the same time, these things are all true in my mind. I'm loving doing what I'm doing, but if it's a tough audience, I'm finding it very difficult at the same time. I'm looking at people who are genuinely getting something from it, whilst simultaneously mentally spotting people who look like they hate it. And this sounds like there's a lot going on in my head when I'm speaking. There is. Now, strangely, of every reference I could give you, I heard Robbie Williams, of all people, refer to this. I've never heard of anybody else refer to this. I've been aware of it for a long time. So I won't give you all the examples he gave because not all of them are totally appropriate. But he was talking about how part of him is making sure he's got the right lyric and the right point in the song. Part of him is ensuring that he is doing a show, because there are thousands of people watching, all paid a lot of money. But he said there's also a part of him that is him. This is simultaneously, while those things are going on, noticing people in the audience that he might find attractive, or wondering why that person's doing that. So this idea of 2 or 3 or 4 split focus is really common. And it's key to understanding how you can be more confident when you present. Because when you present, what I want you to understand is this: what makes you, to the people who love you, to the people that are important to you, to your family, your loved ones, what makes you, your identity, your interests at the weekends, whether you're a foodie or a gardener or whatever you're into, right? That still exists, undiminished, regardless of how well the presentation goes. Now, what you need to begin to acquire when you are about to present, when you stand up to present, when you start presenting, and then when you finish, is almost a mental suit of armor. What does that look like? What does that mean? Well, it means understanding several things. It means understanding that they want to listen to you, even if they look like they don't. It means understanding that you're going to do this to the best of your ability, and that's it. You can't do that any further. And if this is something you don't find easy, that's okay. But it's also understanding in some levels, and this is when you have a really tough audience, that your audience has got no choice anyway. And when I say it to people, it often sounds a little bit flippant, right? That they've got to listen to you. But they kind of have. Because, and I've explained this sometimes to audiences, if I've got a very tough audience, it's very rare I have to do this these days, but once in a while I'll go down this route. I kind of explain to people whether or not you want to be here, whether or not you like my approach, whether or not you agree with what I'm saying, whether or not you're far too busy to be here. The reality is you've shown up. And that means something massive to me, because that tells me you have opted in. Now, I've said this to audiences before, tough audiences. And the feisty ones have said, yeah, well, I had to show up because if I didn't, I'd have been in trouble. To which point I've always said, yeah, but that's still a choice you've made. Literally none of you in this room have been forced to show up and watch. Not one of you. And so if you don't want to be here, you either wouldn't have been here, you'd have found a reason to disappear or to vanish. Nothing to stop you going, oh, I've got a really important phone call, I've got to go and do this. It happens. There's nothing to stop you doing that. So if you haven't done that, and this is what I want you to take with you the next time you're presenting something, I need you to understand that every single person in that room, every single person on that call, every person who's looking at you, listening to you, whatever, they have opted in. They want to be there. Now, this then creates a situation for an extraordinary mind trick. You have to act as though you believe that everybody really wants to be there, because for the reason I've just explained, they do. Even when they're sat there huffing, with their arms folded, glaring at you, rolling their eyes to the people next to them. Now, you can use whatever phrase is important to you. This is a professional broadcast, so I'm not going to. But I do sometimes think, them, because that's how they've chosen to behave. And if that's how they've chosen to behave, that really is on them. And so I'm not saying I find that easy. I am not saying that I'm okay when people are like that. Actually, far from it. I think it's really rude. I think it's astonishing that other professionals are prepared to behave like that. But they do. So we've got to take a slight matter of brain gymnastics here. As I said earlier on, it's a mental suit of armor. You have to act as though people want to be there. You have to act as though you're doing a thing that they all want to listen to, because they kind of do, because their employer has sent them there, or their boss has sent them there, their department, their team has sent them there. So they've got to be there. Now, this slightly changes your relationship to the whole thing. So it's really key that you don't go into any presentation you're giving, particularly when you're feeling a little bit nervous, telling yourself, God, this is going to be tough. I hope this is going to be okay. I kind of don't want to be here. We get all that, but there's nothing you can do about that. You've still got to do this, because when I talk to an audience, I've been paid to go and do that. They've been instructed by their bosses, i.e. they've been paid to go and listen. So let's not kid ourselves. This isn't perfect. This isn't like you are Taylor or Robbie or whoever you're into. It's not that. This isn't people throwing money at you to come and listen to you. This is a grudge booking. All right? If it's an internal team thing, it's a grudge meeting. But it's still got to happen. You've got to do it. They've got to be there. So you have to separate who you are, what makes you important, the people that love you for the reason they love you, the people and things that you love doing. None of that's affected. This is just you at work doing you. Now, once you understand that, it all fundamentally changes, because I can tell you, right, and I can see we've got a handful of people on over a couple of channels. I can tell you that one of the most common issues is people saying, well, what do I do? Because there are people who look like they're loving it and I want to talk to them. No, don't talk to them. There are people who look like they hate it. I want to try and win them over. No, you can't win them over. You can't make people do things they don't want to do. They've shown up, they've opted in, they've already been won over. So who do we look at? What do we do? Do we call out the negative people? Do we address everything to the positive people? No, none of the above. What you do is this, staying with the same mind trick. This is the same trick throughout. You have to act as though you are confident. You have to act as though you understand every single person in the room wants to be there, even the person with a face like a slapped backside. You have to assume that's just how they go through life. You must do this, because if you do not, you will beat yourself up trying to win people over. Or, almost as bad, you will deliver all of your content to the person who looks like they want to really be there. And in both cases, you ignore the vast majority of the audience. Remember what I said right at the start of this broadcast. Most people are entirely fine with being to the presentation, to the conference, to the event, to the meeting, to the briefing. Most people know they've got to be there and will behave kind of okay. So once you understand that, everything can shift and change, because you go in with the absolute firm and certain belief that they want to be there. And because they want to be there, you're going to speak to them as such. And whilst you're speaking to them, they will perhaps win over a little bit. Some of them might start nodding. You might get a few smiles from people. You might get a few laughs. That would be lovely. But however you are, however you present, and I can help you with individual techniques and styles and structures and processes. I can help you with that. I do that a lot. But broadly speaking, however you are is absolutely fine. The way that you talk to people in normal life is entirely acceptable when you're standing up and speaking or when you're talking online. Where it goes wrong is we tend to worry about what we should be doing. I'm going to try and be more funny. I'm going to try and be more engaging. I'm going to be trying to be more enthusiastic and more energetic. I'm going to try and take people along with me. That's really tough. I've been doing that for a long time, and it's really tough. So what I want you to do the next time you're presenting is I want you to start from a place that you know everyone in that room wants to be there, even the ones who look like they're not. Treat everyone like they want to be there, and remind yourself that every single person in that room or on that digital space has opted in. Now, if we think about what do we do about people who haven't turned their cameras on, if it's a digital thing, if we think about what about those people who do sit their arms folded, giving it the big I am, glaring at you, I think we need to understand a couple of things. The problem lies with them. Now, you could be boring, you could be doing some poor work, and that might be a separate issue for us to talk about. And if you ever want help with this topic, let me know, reach out, DM me, and I will work with you, with your team, with your department, with your business, whatever. But by and large, it's never a definite always here. By and large, the problem of the person who behaves poorly in a presentation is their problem, not yours. The person who huffs and puffs and rolls their eyes so that you can see, they have a problem with their own status. The problem with the person who refuses to get engaged, yeah, maybe you could do better, but ultimately these are people who know how they should behave at work and are choosing not to. So I'm going to bring this broadcast to a close in a moment, and I want you to understand this. When you next present, understand everybody who is there has opted in, including you. You could have said no, but you're doing it because you want to further your career, because your boss has told you, because you want to avoid being in trouble. So we need to move away from this idea of I've got to do this. If you're not a naturally funny person, and you should know by now whether you are or not, right? You should have some inkling. The clues should be there. If you're not a funny person, don't try and be funny in the presentation. There's no need to. If you're very, very calm and measured in your speaking, I guarantee you, some people like your style of presentation for that reason alone. If you are quite an energetic presenter, quite an energetic speaker, that's fine. If you're very measured and all about the authority, that's fine. If you never do jokes, that's fine. But with all of these different approaches, it's about you. And you must separate you from the public version of you. Right now, I'm broadcasting onto 3 channels. So I'm still me, however well, badly, or in between this goes. But what's on screen right now is a version of me. And I need you to understand when you're presenting, the same thing applies. So even normal, everyday, professional people that you work with will still look at that person on screen or that person on stage and perhaps be a little bit dismissive of them. Be a little bit, not exactly rude, but not really supportive either. It would be lovely if everyone in the audience was nodding and smiling and laughing at your jokes and going, oh gosh, every time you deliver words of wisdom. But that's not how people behave. I've spoken to plenty of audiences of lovely people, really super people who've really been into what I've been saying, but visually, nothing for a little while. And you think, what's going on here? So you've got to make this separation, you and professional you presenting. What you present is what you present. Now, in a later one of these broadcasts, I will share if you would like this. So give me some heads up in the comments if you'd like to. I will talk a little bit about the separation between what you say and how you say it, but it's a fundamental understanding that loads of people don't get. What you say is only half of what you're doing. The other half is how you say it. And as I say, this is nothing to do with whether you're funny or engaging or serious or can tell a joke or you get people to join in. That's just you, right? You are fine. So our job, if you want to know more about this, our job is to understand that all we need to do is to have that confidence to stand up. Can I say it? That confidence to stand up and say what we need to say and then get through this. But we need to move away from the idea of I've got to start with a funny line. I've got to be quite witty. I've got to be quite engaging. Nobody wants to ask questions at the end. We'll talk about why that is if you're interested. Let me know in the comments. But for now, this has been a nice, quick little live. What have we done? About 24, 25 minutes. Hopefully you found that of use. Let me know in the comments and I will see you next time. Take it easy. Bye.